Good evening. This is Sean Childs of fantasyanalyst.substack.com. Per request, I'm going to take a look at the DraftKings BestBall. It's similar to Underdog, but it's 20 rounds instead of 18. It's full PPR, and then they have bonus points. If wide receiver gets over 100 yards, you get 3 points. Running back over 100 yards, you get 3 points, and a quarterback has to get over 300 yards to get bonus points. The wide receivers can have some big games in this, a little bit more than the Underdog when it's half point PPR. But it's still, you still have to get the core of players the same, and it's really, you're competing in a 12-team league, same as you are at home for the first part of the season, and you just need to win the league. So, part of it is trying to put together a team that can survive and have some structure and of hookups late in the season, but at the same time, you want to, if it doesn't break right, you want to draft the best team and the best players to give each else a chance to win. Unfortunately, it's almost a war of attrition when you're drafting from July to September 1st. There's so many players that get nicked up. One day you like them a little bit, next day you're like, oh, he's, fading because he's got, a little hammy or something going on. But there's still, what do we got, about 17 more days till 16 more days till opening day. So a lot will change. I imagine the best players probably won't play this week. So we haven't seen that, other than JJ McCarthy, we haven't seen that running back that's a frontline running back or a lead running back for a team go down with a torn ACL or something. But every year it seems like that happens late in the year. So I'm going to put this, unfortunately, DraftKings is a little more balky. I don't have the app on the regular the web browser for DraftKings to do daily fantasy, and the best ball is a little more balky to jockey between drafts. So I'm just going to focus on one draft. That's I think it's almost done, but I think we're showing 17 rounds of players for some of these teams. And I'm only going to really, show the first eight rounds or show just to show or what I'm thinking and the structure and stuff. So in this particular case, I wish I could drag this and make this a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can. I can get it. So I can get the whole screen to get it. See the whole thing here. So it's a little bit better. Yeah. So I think in this draft, I pick three. And a lot of times when you're doing these best balls, you're trying to get certain combination of players that you like. You're trying to get hookups, but you're not you don't want to ignore a value if it slides. So I drafted Breece Hall a little earlier. I like him a lot, but what I wanted to do, I can get him in 8, 9, sometimes anywhere in the middle of the first round. But by bringing him up front, I was hoping to get a different combination of wide receivers and decisions on the 3-4 turn. Unfortunately, some of the players like Cooper Kupp was probably in the early draft season, was going in the third round when Puka Nacua got nicked up or whatever's going on with his knee. He backed up a little bit, and Kupp's been the big mover, so it changed the strategy. But you can see this format. 4 teams opened the gate with 3 straight wide receivers. Team 4, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel. Team 6 took Chase, Olave, DJ Moore. Team 7 took Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Brandon Ayuk, and even followed it up with Diggs. By loading up at wide receiver, they're almost going, like I talk in the FFPC about, you want to get the front core wide receivers, maybe get one elite running back, figure out what your RB2. But it's a challenge because this is a best ball format, and you want to make sure that you have enough coverage in all areas. So even if you got 7 or 8 wide receivers, and we can look at the top line here, Team 1 after 17 rounds has 6 wide receivers. Team 2 has 6. Team 3 has 8. Maybe that's not even me. I don't know. I don't think that too many times I drafted 8 receivers, but it could have been. The next team took 7. We got an 8, a 7, a 5, 7 running backs. Now 7 running backs would be kind of difficult because now that person has to have those 5 receivers cover those 3 spots. And I guess he figures with the 4 elite ones, they're going to be in there most of the time, and he's taking darts at the running back position. So I'm not sure that works. The next team had 8 wide receivers, 7, 7, 5, 6. So in most cases, people want to have more wide receivers. I tend to go 3 quarterbacks, three tight ends, 6 running backs, and 8 wide receivers. I know I can, if you have Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and the frontline quarterbacks, that you can go with 2 quarterbacks. But when you're trying to do this, you want to have those type of players kind of get you to the promised land. But each year, at the end of the year, some other quarterbacks do have success. And your last week in week 17, you're kind of at the mercy of who scores the most points in that game. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the best quarterbacks in the game are the best values at the end of the year, at least for scoring in week 17 when all the money is won, because everybody pretty much starts fresh. Everybody gets, even, I don't know if there's 1,000 teams, whatever the number of teams is, you're in the finals and everybody starts tied for last place, not tied for first place. And you got to have a great day. And, you might need 200 points in this format, possibly more. It's all dependent if it's a high scoring week or not. So, the goal is to get there, survive the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and then have the best week of your career. So it really kind of, what I noticed about the draft flow is that, there is the front line 4 running backs that are really, really good in the first round. And Gibbs gets a little bit knocked because he had that little hamstring injury, which wasn't an ACL, but he slid a little bit. But he seems like he's a solid piece to the puzzle if you trust him to be healthy, because the next 5 rounds set up pretty good. At least you're going to feel like you're going to get 3 pretty good wide receivers, possibly 4, depending if you want to add a tight end or quarterback. So the back end, if you take Gibbs, is okay. You could take Taylor, you could take Barkley. When you get to the front, Kyrie and Williams is played really well last year. The Rams really like him a lot. A-Chain has a high ceiling. Henry's, in a better offense, getting older though, not a lot of catches. Still going to have those games where you get double-digit touchdowns. But you can see in the 3rd round, the next running back in this draft didn't go to 310. So Travis Etienne went in 3rd pick in the 4th round. And his ADP typically in this is usually early in the 3rd round. In Underdog, he was more like early to late 2nd round, and sometimes he even slid because not a lot of people like them. But this, when you get in these drafts, you're just looking how the draft flow goes. This was a wide receiver heavy league. I think I like it when they the formats that kind of count them off, like when T. Higgins, what is he, what number wide receiver did he get drafted? So you can kind of see where you're at there. But unfortunately, I'm not going to count them up because that takes a little bit of time. So so the quarterbacks are kind of values. And then the tight ends get sprinkled in from the top ones from 3, I think, till the best value at tight end in this format is, I think, Ferguson from Dallas. He went pick 85, which is, I think his ADP is, 87 to 90. I think that he works really, really well for somebody that's kind of cheating the position. You can pair him up with a couple other tight ends later on. If you take Travis Kelce or Laporta, sometimes they'll just go with the 2 tight ends, and it makes sense. But at some point, one of these players is going to have a bye week, and the tight ends are a little bit better than the the 3rd or 4th wide receiver. You're trying to do a hookup with your quarterback, but the hookup with your quarterback might come in late in the season. So, what I've been trying to do is try to get a couple of teams that where I have the quarterback and the hookups and one front running back. So earlier today, I had it was at Underdog, but similar draft flow. I think I had picked 6, and I went into the draft that I wanted to have a certain style. And I had to be open to how the draft flow was. But when I saw that I had pick 6, I said, all right, I'm going to take Hall. Most likely he's going to be there, and then I'm going to take. I don't have a lot of shares of Collins. From Nico Collins from Houston. So I'm going to try one of these and be a little more of against the grain of my style. So I took Nico Collins, and I was going to come back and take another Houston wide receiver. And then I wanted to get Stroud on the team as well. It broke pretty well where Diggs went earlier. So I got Collins, and then I came back with Dell, and I hooked him up with Stroud, and I was able to get him at a fair price, mixed in like Rashad White, and then I was able to. What I ended up doing is taking the Charger wide receivers, which most of them I haven't really targeted, like McConkey. It was a little nicked up, kind of faded. He got him in at a reasonable price. I took Quentin Johnston late. He's like a wide receiver nobody wants. He was kind of fading. I got Herbert, so I got 3 players from the Chargers. I took Rodgers with Mike Williams. I think I hooked him up with his 3rd wide receiver, whatever his name is, Conley or whatever. And I was able to get the structure where I had Stroud with those players. I'm pretty sure I got the tight end. I think the player that I end up mixing in there, I think I got Kelsey in the 3rd round, and then Dell, and then White, and then I was able to get Stroud in that format. So what I was trying to do is, read the draft board and see if I can get some players I like that have upside, get a good foundation at quarterback and tight end, have an elite running back, and then kind of match up the quarterbacks with the wide receivers. So potentially, if this team could slide through that, maybe in the playoffs, like, a couple of teams hit, I'm a little different in that fashion. And, that's a lot of times what you try to do. If you're at the back end of this draft, and I guess it's a little harder in this, because you can get Patrick Mahomes. If you want to say you got a back end position and you take, just say Bijan Robinson, you can take, Kelsey in the 2nd round, and then you could come back and take Mahomes, and then you can get Rice from the wide receiver early in the 4th round, and he has moved up a lot. Where's Rice in this draft? I want to just make sure I'm saying the right thing. Rice went. So he went in the 4th pick in the 5th round. So some drafts he's kind of going like 46 or something. But basically, like I said, if you're at the back end, you could go, running back, 3 Kansas City players, and then you got that stack, and then you can work on matching up that stack with another offense. Some of the teams are a little more difficult. I really, really like the range where the Thomas kid from Jacksonville, I really didn't draft him a lot early. I liked him. I didn't like where he sat coming in drafts. And then, the reports have been pretty good, and I didn't have shares of him, so I picked up the pace there. But you have, whenever you draft in best balls and you draft in a lot of teams, you have these pockets where you have these certain structures over the first, 3 to 5, first to 6 rounds, where you're trying to take the best available, couple of running backs, 3 wide receivers, maybe tight end, maybe quarterback, however you mix it up. So you kind of diversifying a little bit, mixing up the different running backs, and maybe focus on 1 or 2 players that you really, really like, that you think that are an advantage, and kind of key on them, because you can't cover everybody. But then after that, you're at the mercy of who kind of falls, and then you're going to kind of mix up the next range of players. And like Jaylen Warren is a player that I didn't draft early, but then I started mixing him a lot, but then he gets a little nicked up a hamstring. I'm like, well, I got enough shares of him, so I'm going to park him on the sidelines. And I took like Chase Brown and mix him a lot, and have a rhythm where I have him on some, the same as Thomas. Even this morning, I was doing the projections and updating, and I thought Curtis Samuel he looked pretty good for Buffalo. And I was like, let me put him on a couple of teams today. And I've only had him on like maybe 1, possibly 2 teams out of 250 I drafted. I'm not in all the 250 that I'm doing. I haven't made it that far, so he would be available. So I put him on a couple teams, and then, as he pick up a turf toe injury, could have avoided that pitfall, because I was kind of not fading him. I just wasn't in the Buffalo camp. I didn't like where Allen went. Drafted a couple teams just to have shares, but I'm not going to end up with a lot of them. Don't like the transition at wide receiver. Don't know what's going to happen. Don't like the Week 17 matchup at home against the Jets, which could have a pretty good defense. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm not taking him. But so, like I said, that stuff kind of happens. Like DeAndre Johnson, for Carolina, nice, pass catcher for Pittsburgh, and coming off a down year, and he gets a new home with Carolina. I threw him on a couple teams, but then he just didn't fit my style, what I was trying to do. And I didn't want to hook him up with a quarterback as a 3rd quarterback. So he's kind of like dead money for me. I'm not really in the Xavier Worthy camp based on where he goes in drafts. I think he's talented and could have some big playability. But I just thought that he was overpriced for his potential opportunity. I liked Hollywood Brown or Marquise Brown a lot more. longer resume, Rice, elite player, just, pending, that he plays all year with a suspension. So realistically, I mean, you can look at the drafts and you could say that, there's players that I don't like and there's players I like, but I can't ignore that any one of these players could potentially have success like at the end of the season in the right matchup. So, but I can't cover every single, angle or whatever. So I have to pick my spots. And that's what I've tried to do. A-Chain, I faded him a little bit. I don't have a lot of Henry. Kyren Williams, I always try to handcuff him with his other running back. In this format, you can handcuff one running back pretty good. Like typically, if Barkley I handcuff, Williams I would handcuff, A-Chain I would handcuff with the third running back in Miami. Not for Mostert. I'm completely fading him this year. I've taken Stevenson a couple times at running back. I just don't feel good about New England, and I just feel like it's this kind of like a dull pick. But there's sometimes, especially when you're drafting in that range from, say, like, 9th to the 12th round, and you're like, do I have the running back structure okay where that third running back can at least contribute? Like if Eckler's there, and this is a PPR league, and I know he's not going to get a ton of catches, but do I take him or an upside back, or do I take Nick Chubb, coming off an injury that could be a second half finisher? So yeah, I tend to look at, if I have three pretty good backs, like if I had, like ETN and White and Hall, I can take the upside player and feel comfortable, and I don't need the handcuff. But if it's somebody that, like, even if I take Warren, if I had Hall, ETN, and Warren, I liked it and had upside. I was kind of open to go either direction. I could take somebody with points or upside, but then when Warren gets a little nicked up, I think I need to get a little better early season coverage, so I might lean towards Eckler. And those are the kind of decisions that have a lot of float in these formats. Double hookups are pretty good. I thought that in the early draft position, it was pretty easy. If you want to match up Jalen Hurts with his first two receivers, all you have to do is move A.J. Brown to like 3 or 4. You can get Smith. You could take Hurts in the 3rd round. I mean, this person got him in the 4th, but you can't trust that there if you want to do that double hookup. And somebody will most likely snipe him before it. And if somebody pays attention to the draft board, sometimes they try to block you. I'm fine with that, because you don't want other people to get these teams that are really favorable. Because even if you're playing in the best ball contest against a bunch of teams, the teams that don't break right for you, you need to defend the home court and not allow those teams to have the easy picks that make their team. Because it seems like in the high stakes market, there's always, some players that draft that are really, really good at it, and they'll have like 6 players exactly who they needed. It broke really well. They don't have a tight end, or they don't have a quarterback, and then this like say in this particular case, like Ferguson walks all the way down to him and then gets his 7th player, and he ends up getting a impact player. I remember that I played in the World Championship Fantasy Football, and I was in pick 1, and the person that won, Tony Windus, won the overall that year, and he was in pick 2, and he had the tight end Finley of Green Bay, and he took him in the 5th round. I was pinned in the corner. He was coming into me, and Jason Witten, who was a pretty good pass catcher back then, had a lot of volume. He made it to him. He shot on the clock the whole time, and he wouldn't let me have Witten. If he lets me have Witten, there's a good chance I would have won that overall that year. We were neck and neck in the playoffs, and playoffs for our league. He was a little bit fortunate. He picked Michael Vick off the waiver wire, and he had a great season. But I just didn't gel in the playoffs. And like I said, Witten was a big difference maker, especially late in the year. So, if you have time and you're doing a single fast draft, you got a little more time to look at. When you got a bunch of drafts going like I do, I kind of more focus on what I'm doing. If I drafted somebody a lot, then I'm not gonna. If somebody beats me, I've drafted Aaron Rodgers a lot of times as the 2nd quarterback. I think he's a value based on what I'm trying to do. But if somebody beats me to him and drafts them early, that's fine. What I tend to do is look to see who drafted that name, so I can look at it again, because if I play against that player, if I'm close to him, I might have to make sure I take him a little round early if that's important to my team structure. I have pretty good retention of names, which is helpful. when I'm looking at this stuff. But in general, I'm just drafting my team and then drafting the best team possible. But I'm all, at the same time with a vision of trying to get the hookups. I'm okay with you know, like doubling, early with two tight ends. If it doesn't break right and you think somebody's a weaker position, I probably have a higher stance of players that I don't want, and will fade. So I'm gonna get burnt by some players if they play well. Like I haven't drafted Zamir White at all. I think he's a talented player and he'll run the ball decent. Don't like his pass catching ability, and I'm not sure he's going to get impactful touchdowns. And I think there'll be other guys that get in the way there. So he's not a player that I like. Stevenson took a couple shots, didn't like him. Mostert, I'm fading. Swift, I've taken some shares. Okay, you can handcuff him with Herbert at a reasonable price. I'm okay with that. I've taken Pollard with Spears, double that up. I've taken Pollard by himself. I've taken Aaron Jones a decent amount, but I can't. I haven't handcuffed him. His handcuff goes in a bad spot. I avoided James Conner for a long time, but drafted as Benson behind him because I think he has the potential, to be a potential stud if Conner had an injury and Conner's coming off of, kind of a career season. Good player when he's on the field, but he tends to miss 3 to 4 games. So he's the guy that I'm picking on that is going to lose his job. So I didn't draft him, but the couple teams that I said, let me have a couple shares of him. I made sure that I handcuffed him. Montgomery, I had him really faded until Gibbs had the issue, and then Montgomery really didn't move up that much, so I kind of looked at him. All right, I'm going to get my shares of him just in case Gibbs, hamstring ends up being worse, or has a second injury and it is a problem. So I've got him discounted, and if I took a team with Gibbs, I thought he was nicked up, and Montgomery was still there, I thought I just doubled him up just to have the Lions thing and took my beating at that first running back position to have those. So that was kind of a challenge. Henry's his handcuffs goes kind of late. Jacobs, I've decided Jacobs, if I take Jacobs and I'm going to handcuff him, I get really late. And I would only do that here, not an underdog, because they draft 5 running backs at underdog. But here I would take A.J. Dillon. The other running back is nicked up. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. He gets drafted a lot higher, and I don't want to invest a player that's not going to play for 3 or 4 weeks, especially in a best ball format where, zeros are going to kind of hurt you, especially if you don't have strength at running back. The pocket for in these formats, I think the front part of the draft, I think Mahomes is by far the best value for me at quarterback. I'm okay with Hurts and getting the hookups. Stroud is a really intriguing player. Really like all his weapons. I bumped up his projections this week. He's really the second quarterback I'd like to have, but I'm more gravitating towards him when I have the Houston wide receivers. But if he has an ADP, I believe in this one around 70, if he slides that extra round and he's the 80s, I'm not going to leave him for, you had your chance to hook him up with one of your receivers and you let him go. That's your fault. And I'll take him every time. The tight end position, I really like the first 4 players a lot. Laporta coming off injury. I've taken Kincaid a decent amount. Andrews, I probably has the least amount because I'm not going to have a lot of Lamar Jackson. And it's not a knock on Lamar Jackson as a player. It's just that I don't like his wide receivers. I don't trust that they'll be good. I mean, Andrews is really the number one receiving option. Nicked up last year. Likely he's pretty good behind him. Lamar gets his value from running, but I did a couple teams, but I didn't really stick to that. Kyle Pitts, everybody likes him to have another bounce back season with Cousins at quarterback. I took him on a few, but I would rather, like in this draft, like he went in the 6th round. I would much rather get him, somewhere in the 6th round if I didn't have a tight end than take him in the 5th round when I could potentially get a running back that kind of fit what I was trying to do. And then when it got into the quarterbacks like Dak, I'm very interested in it if I have Lamb in paying a reasonable price, maybe 7th to 10th round, depending on what I have for players. But I would probably lean towards going the extra round on that type of player. Murray, I kind of hooked up with Harrison if possible, or even as tight end. Don't really fight for him as a Bear quarterback. I would take Burrow and Love as single quarterbacks, no matter who I had, just when I knew that I kind of had a pretty good structure of wide receiver, running backs, and a tight end, and I wanted to have one decent frontline quarterback to kind of be my foundation, give me a good score. So basically, I would be looking at Dak, Burrow, Love, and Purdy would always go later, and you could potentially get him in this is the 8th round. I think you could get him in the hundreds. Like the end of the 8th round is 96, so you can potentially get him a lot in the 9th round. So I thought that was favorable. I think Ferguson, like I said, is the best deal. I completely faded Ingram after 113 catches. I thought that he had a career season. The structure is a little bit different. I thought that maybe potentially that ETN could steal some of his targets. To think what else here. Neutral on Kenneth Walker from Seattle. Took him, mixed him in some. James Cook, I took him on some. Didn't really fight too hard for him because Allen steals so many of the touchdowns, and in his pass catching upside, he'll have some, but he'll have some big games. I just don't think the consistency factor will be there for me. I like Kamara, but I kind of will handcuff him with Miller, I think his name is, that's nicked up, but I don't trust that's kind of a gamble because now I'm throwing away a pick in like I don't know, pick 180 or so that's potentially not going to play at all. But if Kamara had an injury, he could be somebody that could kind of hit at the back end. Let's see here if I missed anything that's stands out. Ayuk, I probably didn't draft too much. I got one team I'm working in the process. I went with the thought process of take Ayuk with the Pittsburgh Pickens. Figure maybe he gets traded, and I'll take both both Pittsburgh quarterbacks and take my chances that that's the stack to have over there. And might not be a lot of combinations where they have all of them, but I will be giving away a pick because I'll most likely still take two other quarterbacks. So I'll have to sacrifice probably the third tight end there, unless I have really, really good running backs and I can go a different direction. Mike Evans, I kind of faded. Neighbors from Giants, I liked him a lot. I think he's priced high considering he doesn't have a resume. Metcalf, like him. Pacheco, have him on some, but I'm more in the camp of the passing game in Kansas City. And let's see here, McBride, Flowers, Dell, Keenan Allen, had him early. When they said he was, his weight was up, I kind of backed off. I think that he was kind of a discount because he's like a volume guy, but we don't know how it's going to, shake out. I really like the rookie receiver, Odunze. I think that's how you say it, Odunze. I like his upside and potential. DJ Moore, obviously. So that combination is kind of sneaky, and I think that offense, has potential there, especially in the second half of the year. Washington, McLaurin took him some, but didn't really make an effort to hook him up with a quarterback, but it probably should have one of those. And I really have to dig down and look at the last couple matchups. Curtis Samuel, I mentioned, I'm not drafting Coleman where he grows. He's going to have to beat me this year. So it's just, it's interesting. So like I said, the front part of the draft, you can get that good running back if you want, and the receivers still kind of make it. Devontae Adams, surprisingly, he seemed like he was fading a little bit, like Kupp had passed him. Olave was sliding a little bit. Drake London, he feels like he's mispriced for me because he's, he needs to prove that he can do it and score touchdowns. But, I can't ignore that I have Gibbs on so many teams and he's at the back end. So I'll have shares with him. I have Gibbs with Nakua, with Harrison, with Collins, Taylor, London, Adams, Barkley. I'm not sure I have Olave. I have him Kupp. Somebody did mention to me is that getting Nakua and Kupp together, and I said, well, if you want that, you just have to do it at 11 or 12, and that's potentially a combination that not many people will have because they're not willing to move Kupp there. But that would be interesting. I'm just not. I mean, Stafford's pretty good. He just doesn't run a lot, so he's kind of you really got to, even if you do that, you got to have one frontline quarterback in front of him. But on the last note, I won't go too long on this. Half an hour is probably enough for talking about it. That when we look at the first round of the draft, there's only one team that has two players that are getting drafted in the first round, and that's the Jets. Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. Their quarterbacks 40 years old, pretty good resume, coming off an Achilles injury. I like Mike Williams a lot where he goes. I think he has the size, and he would really be helped by Rodgers' ability to get the ball to him in close. He can make big plays. I don't need him to be great when he's my fifth wide receiver on my team. But based on those three players, and even you could say that the other Jets wide receiver, maybe it's Corley, that he has some upside talent, and he's kind of hard to gauge, and their tight end is okay. The package is pretty good, and when you get to the range where Rodgers is getting drafted, he's a player that I think is going to keep the job all season, and he's going to deliver a competitive season. He can have a lot more upside, and I get why all these other players are getting drafted in front of him, but this is the best ball format. So I'm going to come out of these best balls with a lot of these front quarterbacks, and I'm going to have Rodgers as the second quarterback a lot. I'm going to take Breece Hall every chance I get. I don't have enough Garrett Wilson because I took Gibbs so much, but he didn't really kind of make it a lot. So any team I have Garrett Wilson, I want to make sure I got Rodgers to have that combination. But I think that he's really, really intriguing. As far as the back end of the draft, the players that don't really get drafted, A.T. Perry of the Saints, the Shaheed guy's a little bigged up. He's kind of a big guy that could be potentially explosive. I think that he's worth a flyer as a late draft pick. I just did a piece on Deuce Vaughn. Really liked him last year. I thought he'd get a chance if Pollard got nicked up. Didn't really emerge. Was on IR late. Did nothing. Got no resume. So and then he picked up a hamstring issue in July. So he's completely off everybody's radar. And Elliott, is a grinder back. He'll catch some balls, be not explosive, but he will help move the chains if Dallas is playing well. But they really need a secondary player that can catch the ball, make some plays, and I really think he's the guy that would potentially do it. He wasn't getting drafted. I saw that he played in the preseason game. He was like 5 for 34. Didn't see the game, but I just know that what I thought of him last year. So the light bulb clicked is like, in DraftKings format at the sixth running back. Especially if I have a Dallas, stack going, I'm okay. A lot of people won't focus on having the stack with the running back with the quarterback, and that stuff comes in sometimes. A few years back, 2017, had a great season. The Rams were on the road. Todd Gurley was the quarterback, and they were playing in Tennessee, and there was Gurley got a 90-yard touchdown pass, had this massive game. He scored 50 points back-to-back games, but, the quarterback and the running back came in. 1 year in the overall in the NFC, it was just actually Bulger and some other Steven Jackson, quarterback and running back hookup. So I'm conscious of not being afraid when I'm looking for the hookups. If I have ETN and I have Lawrence, I don't have any receivers, but if I have ETN and Lawrence, I'll gamble, that maybe that hits this year. And I got the hookup for the running back and the quarterback, which is a little different than most. And sometimes, even if you got the Rodgers, if I have Breece Hall and I still take Rodgers, I don't really care because over the course of the season, if Rodgers is not going to be on my lineup every week, but, Hall is going to get some good scores and, they could go bounce back and forth where I get, a decent amount of games out of both sides of that offense. So, just that's some of the thoughts I have. I'm trying to think of anybody else. I think it's if I had Cincinnati, their wide receiver Gesicki kind of comes off a couple of years that he underperformed, but I think he's going to fit in pretty well. The tight ends, they borrow through the tight ends a lot last year, but I think he's going to kind of offers a little more big plays and maybe sneaky touchdowns. He might not get the volume, but as the third tight end, he could sneak in there. Same with Okonkwo. But I don't like that offense as much as everybody else. I do have Ridley a decent amount. And I guess DeAndre Hopkins, I only drafted him once and I regretted it, but it looks like he's going to be ready for week 1. So maybe that works out. And he was getting discounted. So, but I just didn't know the extent of his injury. Benson, I don't have the running back from Carolina, the rookie, too much. I took him a couple times and I matched him up with Sanders just in case the other Hubbard got hurt. Didn't really like it. He felt like I got beat. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts. Talking about DraftKings. Kind of rambling here, but hopefully this is helpful. And it's a very, very interesting event because once this is over, there's nothing you can do, and it's going to play out. You're just going to watch it, and the goal is to come in first and second in your league and get as many teams through, and hopefully you don't have some early season injury that kind of crushes a lot of your teams if you roster them a lot. So that's all I have to say about this. I'll do more of talk about the players when like player to player and when I do the NFFC and the Fantasy Football World Championships in the next 2 days.